Guardiola silent, but Manchester City already in contact over Enzo Fernandez transfer. Welcome to Chelsea FC Daily, your trusted source for every blue story. Hello again, Chelsea family. We are so glad you keep coming back to us. The Enzo Fernandez saga just will not slow down, and today we have a fresh angle that adds a whole new layer to the story. This time, the spotlight moves away from Madrid and lands on Manchester instead. Grab a seat and let us walk through this together in the simple and honest way you have come to expect from us. A new name enters the Enzo Fernandez story. Just when Chelsea fans thought they had a handle on the Enzo Fernandez transfer talk, a new name has quietly entered the picture. Pep Guardiola himself has stayed silent on the current transfer saga surrounding Fernandez. He has not made any fresh public comments about the situation. But silence does not always mean nothing is happening behind the scenes. In fact, looking back at what Guardiola has said about Fernandez in the past gives us a much clearer picture of why his name is now being connected to this story at all. Let us break this down piece by piece because there is a lot to unpack here. Guardiola's long-standing admiration for Fernandez. This is not the first time Pep Guardiola has spoken about Enzo Fernandez. Long before any of this transfer talk began, Guardiola had already shown real admiration for the Argentine midfielder. Back during Fernandez's breakout periods, when he was first turning heads with his performances, Guardiola praised his qualities and identified him as a genuinely elite talent. Think about what that means. Guardiola is widely respected as one of the best coaches in the world, someone who studies players closely and rarely hands out praise without good reason. When a manager of his level publicly says a young player has elite qualities, it is worth remembering, because it often signals long-term interest, even if nothing happens right away. The press conference comments from April 2026. Now let us move to a more recent and more interesting moment. Back in April of 2026, Guardiola made comments during a press conference that caught a lot of attention. At the time, Chelsea had made the decision to temporarily leave Fernandez out of the squad after he made public comments about preferring Madrid as a city. Guardiola weighed in on that disciplinary decision, comparing how Chelsea handled it to a separate situation involving his own player, Rodri, who had made his own comments around that same period. On the surface, this might look like a manager simply offering his opinion on how another club handled a disciplinary matter. But many people who follow the game closely saw something deeper in those comments. Why people believe there was a hidden message here is where the story gets really interesting. Manchester City have reportedly admired Fernandez for a long time. On top of that, his former manager at Chelsea, Enzo Maresca, is now in charge at Manchester City. That connection matters a lot in football. Managers often want to reunite with players they have worked with before, especially ones they already trust and understand tactically. Because of these two factors, many observers believe that Guardiola's public defense of Fernandez back in April was not just a random opinion. Instead, it may have been an early psychological move, a subtle way of showing support for a player that Manchester City could eventually try to sign, long before any formal approach was ever made. Isn't that a fascinating way to think about football politics? A manager's public comments are rarely just simple observations. Sometimes they carry a much bigger purpose, especially when there is a real transfer interest sitting quietly in the background. Manchester City have already made contact. This is the part of the story that turns speculation into something much more concrete. Reports now indicate that Manchester City have already reached out to Enzo Fernandez's camp about a potential move. This is a significant step. Reaching out to a player's representatives is usually one of the earliest and most direct signs that a club is seriously exploring a transfer, rather than simply admiring a player from a distance. So while Guardiola himself may be staying quiet publicly right now, the club around him has clearly been active behind the scenes. This lines up with the idea that his earlier comments back in April may have been laying some early groundwork for exactly this kind of move. Where does Chelsea stand on a potential sale? Naturally, none of this matters unless Chelsea are willing to actually sell. According to reports, Chelsea are looking for a fee of around £120 million if they are going to let Fernandez leave the club. At the same time, Chelsea would also be perfectly happy keeping him if that price is not met. This is an important detail to understand. Chelsea are not desperate to sell. They are not panicking or rushing to offload their star midfielder. Instead, they appear to be taking a firm and confident stance. If a club wants to take Fernandez away from Stamford Bridge, they will need to be willing to pay a serious amount of money to make that happen. If not, Chelsea seem completely comfortable holding on to one of their key players and continuing to build around him. Manchester City's approach to negotiations. On the other side of this potential deal, Manchester City are reported to be hoping to negotiate. That word negotiate is important here. It suggests that City may not be willing to simply meet Chelsea's asking price without some back-and-forth discussion first. Any final agreement is likely to depend heavily on where Chelsea's valuation actually lands once real negotiations begin. This is where the classic transfer standoff usually takes shape. One club sets a high valuation and holds firm. The interested club tries to negotiate the number down or looks for alternative structures to the deal, such as add-ons or payment terms spread across a longer period. Until both sides find common ground, a deal like this can move very slowly, even when there is genuine interest from both parties. Why this situation is so different from the Real Madrid story. If you have been following our earlier coverage of the Enzo Fernandez saga, you will remember that Real Madrid publicly and firmly denied any interest in signing him. That denial was strong, direct, and left very little room for doubt from Madrid's side. The Manchester City situation looks quite different. There has been no public denial here. Instead, we have a manager with a long history of praising the player, comments from earlier this year that many believe carried a deeper meaning, a familiar former manager now working at the club in question, and confirmed contact between Manchester City and Fernandez's camp. All of these pieces fit together in a much more connected way than the Real Madrid story ever did. Does this mean a move to Manchester City is guaranteed? Not at all. Football transfers can fall apart for many reasons, even when interest looks strong on paper. But compared to the Madrid rumors, this Manchester City connection appears to be built on a much more solid foundation of actual contact and background history. What role could Enzo Maresca play in this deal? It is worth spending a little more time thinking about Enzo Maresca's role in all of this. As Fernandez's former manager at Chelsea, Maresca already understands his strengths, his personality, and how he fits into a system. If Maresca is now helping shape recruitment decisions at Manchester City, it would make complete sense for him to push for a player he already trusts and has worked with successfully in the past. This kind of manager and player reunion happens fairly often in football. Managers like working with players they already know can perform under pressure. If Maresca truly wants Fernandez back working under him, that could end up being one of the strongest driving forces behind this entire transfer link, even more than Guardiola's own public comments. What would losing Fernandez mean for Chelsea? We have touched on this before, but it is worth repeating here. Enzo Fernandez has become an important part of Chelsea's midfield since his arrival. He brings passing quality, composure, and big game experience as a World Cup winner. Losing a player like that would leave a real gap in the middle of the park, one that Chelsea would need to fill either through the squad they already have or through new additions in a future transfer window. At the same time, a fee of £120 million would give Chelsea a significant amount of money to reinvest elsewhere in the squad. Big transfer sagas like this one are rarely simple. There is always a balance between wanting to keep your best players and recognizing the value that a large transfer fee could bring to strengthen other parts of the team. What do you think happens next? Now it is your turn to share your thoughts. Do you believe Guardiola's comments back in April were truly just an innocent opinion about a disciplinary decision? Or do you think there was a deeper transfer-related motive behind them, as many people now suspect? And with Manchester City already making contact and Chelsea holding firm on their valuation, do you think this deal eventually gets done, or does it end up falling apart the way so many transfer sagas do? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for reading Chelsea FC Daily. Thank you so much for joining us again today. We covered Guardiola's past praise for Fernandez, his comments from April of 2026 and the theories behind them, Manchester City's confirmed contact with the players' camp, and where Chelsea currently stand on a potential sale. This story continues to grow layer by layer, and we will be right here to break down every new development for you. Keep checking back with us here at Chelsea FC Daily as this saga continues. This is Chelsea FC Daily, your trusted home for every blue story. Stay close, stay informed, and as always, up the blues.